Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas Hawkins, and I'm with CITL. I'm also a member of the planning committee for this conference. And I'm here to introduce the next event on our schedule for today. Instead of a keynote, we'll be hosting a Fireside Chat with John Baker, President and CEO of D2L, and Ryan Murphy, who's the Student Leadership Development Coordinator with Student Life here at Memorial, as well as a PhD student. Ryan will be asking John questions for about 40 minutes, and then there'll be 20 minutes at the end for audience questions. So we've got two microphones here set up at the bottom, and we ask that you come down to the front to ask your questions so that they'll be heard by the whole audience and on the live stream as well. But if you're unable to come down to the microphone, I'll have a wireless mic available, and I can deliver to your seat. So please join me in welcoming Ryan and John.
Thanks, Thomas, and thanks to the organizing committee for setting this up. I'm pretty excited to be here. I'm a little nervous. I don't know why, because John's got to answer the questions, right? But I had to come up with some good ones. For a little bit of a prelude, I really insisted on a fire being played behind us.
It's a great fire.
Yes, it's a good fire. It's got a tire for some reason. John,
brings me back to my Newfoundland bonfire roots.
Yeah. But when I was thinking about it, the fire is kind of neat because arguably it's one of the first ed techs, right? Education technology, pieces of education technology. People sitting around a fire or a fire allowed people to sit around and tell stories and so on. So there's something kind of neat about that. Today we'll be talking about the past, the present, and the future of education technology and its power for transformative learning. So there's a neat little, symbol there. John, do I call you John, Mr. Baker, Dr. Baker?
John.
John. Have we given you an honorary degree yet? Not yet. Not yet. And then one last thing. So I have, you heard that I'm a PhD student. I studied psychology and computer science as a bachelor's because I was interested in how people work and how technology works, specifically because I'm interested in how those two things are connected to make us better. And then I studied design and strategic foresight in order to understand how the education system is changing. And now I'm studying the management of information systems because I'm interested in the use of those systems for education. So arguably, I've had 10 years of experience or 10 years of formal training to be able to ask John some hard questions.
Oh, no.
That's kind of what I'm going for. The first one's easy, though. John, I think you're from around here. Can you tell us a bit about where you're from?
Yeah. Well, to be fair to Ryan, I've also read up on Ryan. So he and I share a similar passion. I took an epistemology of systems thinking class in my final year of university with a passion of looking at the education system, and you've done similar. So I look forward to the talk here today.
Yeah.
So originally born in Wesleyville. Anyone know? Yeah. Just a few people. Okay, it's called New West Valley now. I think they've merged the towns together. Both my parents were educators. My grandfather was an educator. Both my parents actually and my grandfather attended Memorial. It was Memorial College for my grandfather. It was Memorial University for my parents. They met at the dining hall just up the laneway here. So, for me, it's a great opportunity to come home. We do a lot of work in the province. And it's an exciting opportunity right now as you look at this transformative learning to have a real impact on teaching and learning across the province. So I'm thrilled to be here.
And thanks for coming. So you're from here, but where are you based now? And what do you do these days exactly?
So I moved to Ontario, went to the University of Waterloo as a student. And in my third year of university, I got an idea, which was actually really well tied into the theme of this conference. So I like the one definition here this morning, which was sort of the aha moment, sort of creating an epiphany. And for me, it was one of my faculty members challenged us to an open-ended design project. Go off and solve a problem, find a problem, and then solve it versus just solving problems. And that knocked us out of our comfort zones as engineers. We were really good at solving problems. And it unlocked something in me. Instead of going off and doing the normal course of going off and going to work for some other company, it was, what other problem exists in the world? What's the biggest problem that I could solve that would have the biggest impact on the world? And I wrestled with that challenge for a long time. And I still remember the day walking across campus and when it hit me, using the power of the internet, using the power of technology to have a transformational impact on learning has this natural ripple effect. Not only does it impact the folks that you're teaching, right? Or the fact that we get an opportunity to work with you who impact so many others. But it also ripples through communities, it ripples through generations, it ripples through time. And I believe learning is at the heart of solving all the world's problems. Mm-hmm. So whether it's economic challenges, political challenges, societal challenges, learning is at the core of addressing each one of these. And so I said, let's create a startup and kind of build it, and we've been off and running since then.
Mm-hmm. And that this startup is D2L.
D2L. Oh yeah, I should have. I work at a company called D2L, or Desire to Learn, mm-hmm. and I think Memorial and the college and the K-12 folks are all good clients here in the province. So.
Mm-hmm. And it's neat. So you just said that teaching or having an impact on education has an impact on the world. Something we heard this morning is that that's kind of reciprocal too. That some of the best learning experiences, as you experienced with this epiphany, came from this idea of getting our students to go out and do things in the world. Mm-hmm. So it's neat how it circles around. Mm-hmm. So we heard a little bit about D2L just then, but where exactly did it come from? Because I heard a bit about that last year when you presented, but I think it'd be nice to remind the audience of how exactly did D2L develop from that founding moment? So
it started off as just something fun to do for the summer, to work on a problem that I was really interested in. Mm-hmm. And there was a few universities that said, you probably could do this full time. And honestly, I didn't think about it being a full-time opportunity until someone said that to me. Before that, it was really a passion. It was wanting to explore a new area. And I tell you, in '99, when I first started doing this, the presentations to a university prof were, let me put some acetate overheads on the projector and show you what the internet looks like. And this is what your course could look like on the internet. And it was not an easy sell. So it took a long time to build a company from that base up. So today, we're providing a learning platform, building out e-portfolios, repositories, looking at the education system as a whole, mm-hmm. and figuring out where can we have the biggest impact on, measurable impact for students, for faculty, for the system. And to me, at the heart of it, it's like, how do we make sure we're building, not just helping to transition to digital, putting things online, putting content online, but now how do we actually have an impact on the quality of the educational experience as we've now gone digital? And I think that next wave is where you're going to see a lot of exciting work happen. That will have a transformational impact.
And do you want to talk about any of that next wave work right now?
Sure. So, the first wave of this work of going online, how many are offering have online courses now, or blended courses that use some online? So most of the people in the room. So that first wave has happened. So we've gone digital, and that's a big transformation. Steve Jobs used to say this about the Apple. It's like I looked at the desktop, and I wanted everything that was on my desktop to be in the computer. And very similar to like the first wave of this was everything in the classroom. Well, how do we represent that online? And then how do we break down all the barriers? So one of the first ones we tackled was accessibility. So this is pretty transformative. But if you were blind or deaf or hard of hearing or had visual impairment, you were not able to participate equally with all of your classmates throughout your entire education journey. Right. Whether it's you had to have special accommodations, or in some cases you just weren't able to take the program, and that's no longer the case. Mm-hmm. There's no restriction on you with those challenges anymore. So that was a big challenge. And breaking down geography. So I come from rural Newfoundland. Not every course is being offered in Wesleyville. Mm-hmm. So how do we go online to be able to provide access for these kids? Or a trip to India was my eye-opening moment on mobile, where I went to visit a slum where we went in there with the Governor General's wife, and they clearly prepared the slum for us. They'd washed down the streets, and it was a well groomed experience. But these students that were in the class, at the end of the presentation, one of them actually put up their hand and she asked, when are you going to teach me something that will be of value to me in my life? And everyone in the room just went very quiet. They did not expect that as a question. Because what they were teaching was how to sew and how to use Excel. And that was the education that they were getting in that community. And then so that was sort of the first part of it. But the next part of it was the Governor General's wife. Well, let me teach you some exercise, because exercise and health is good for you for your life. And she got up and started to show them her exercise routine, and that was pretty funny. And everyone laughed. But they all took out their smartphones and took a photo. And I had to put up my hand. I went, how do you all have smartphones? And they said, well, these are like third-hand devices. They cost next to nothing. We use Wi-Fi for data. And it dawned on me, like another barrier is just about to fall. We can now reach any student anywhere in the world using mobile, as long as we do like responsive web versus like requiring them to have the latest device.
Right.
So the first wave of all this was sort of knocking down all those key barriers.
Right.
And I think we're still getting through some of them. But the next wave is where we start to tackle the transformative learning piece, which is what this conference is about. And to me, I think to understand transformative learning, you have to understand the history of learning. And I didn't have an appreciation until probably at least 10 years into building my company on that topic.
Your company on education.
On education, yeah, which is ironic. And I still say I'm learning a lot here. But one of the things that I like the most about education is the fact that we get to have this thing called study time. I was actually talking to the president of the college here last night about this, and to me, study time used to be cramming for an exam. That was my definition of study time. I don't know about you, but that's what it felt like. But in my reading, study time actually used to mean a lot more than that. It used to mean pondering the big questions in life, exploring your research, exploring relationships that you have in the community, and much more reflective, more liberal arts kind of an experience, if you will. And settled knowledge, which is what we largely focus on in terms of transformative learning today. We got to teach them this knowledge. Here's how you learn this part of nursing, or here's how you work with patients, or here's how you...
how to do integrations, as we heard this morning.
Yeah, exactly. But that's, in my mind, that's important. Teaching that settled knowledge, we have to do that very effectively. But we now need to, and why we do that is critical for the professions, whether it's nursing or engineering or doctors. We need to teach that. But if we can now teach that more effectively, like in half the time, it frees up more time to explore what we call study time. So people can become better artists, better entrepreneurs, better community members, better citizens. They can take time to actually really reflect on what they want to do with their life. Right. So I'd say the next wave of our work has got to be focused on that. It's the ability for you to teach really effectively the stuff that needs to be taught, that settled knowledge, the things that people know that need to be passed on to the next generation. But then give them a gift of time to be able to go explore the bigger challenges. And that's where I think you get this transformational effect. Because very rarely is it going to be me telling you something that's going to go, you're going to go, oh, that's like, I've transformed now. No, it's usually when you take your own ownership over it. That
when you're challenged to think of an idea. And
yeah, exactly. You can be the spark for the fire, but you're not the fire.
So do you have any stories then of things that you've seen like that? Things that have, or of courses or programs or of even individual classes where students have learned something much more quickly, accessed settled knowledge much more quickly?
So the big trend today is around a shift more towards a competency-based model, or in Canada we often refer to it as an outcomes-based model for learning.
Sure.
And you'll see advertisements in the States for finish your degree in a year. And we have clients where that's actually happened, where they have students that have taken a year to finish a 4-year program. I don't think that's why we want to do it. That's not the why. Now, there may be someone in the workforce that has to be able to go and pick up that new settled knowledge so they can carry on with their career faster. So that might be one compelling reason. But what it also does is it frees up time for settled knowledge to be taught quickly, so that you can explore this study time opportunity.
Right.
And I think we need to, as universities and colleges and schools, we need to figure out how we weave this together now, if we can become more effective.
Right.
There are folks that I talk to that are on the sort of the cutting edge of this, where they're trying to use AI and brain sensing. Like we're even in our own labs, we've tried out brain sensing headbands. We're trying all kinds of different ways to think about how to teach more effectively. and the goal is to take what used to take 8 years down to a year, so that you can get people to a point of productivity a lot faster. So I think there's promise of doing that. It's just not here for the mainstream yet today. But if we take the model of, well, how do we work that into like the current system? Like how many have moved towards a complete competency-based, mastery-based model for their programs today?
I think you asked this question last year and it was a similar response.
Yeah, none, right? But report after report comes out saying every professional school, whether it's nursing or medicine or engineering, this is where you're all going. But we're not there yet. Why? It takes a lot of work. We have to rewrite the content. We have to rewrite how we interact. We have to rewrite how we interact with our student information systems. We have to talk to policymakers to think about how do we compensate around this. It's a big change, and it's going to take time. But it can also work into the existing system, right? So the college system understands this, and many other programs understand this. You have a defined curriculum, right, which is part of the theme of the conference. And if you define that, then you can start linking it to the activities and to the assessment items. Well, that's at the core of competency-based. That's like the core of competency-based education. And then you get towards a proficiency or mastery-based model. It may be still in the same time-boxed window, but at least you're stepping your way towards that more complete solution. Does that make sense?
I think so.
But I think where we're trying to get, maybe it's not today, maybe it's 10 years from now, is the point where we're unlocking people's imagination. That's where you get the epiphany moments.
Right.
That's where you get another, huge multiplication impact in terms of speed of teaching settled knowledge, and then opening up people's minds to new ways of exploring, what they really want to be in life.
Right. I'm reminded of the problem of assessment and of the notion that we have to test, right? We have to test settled knowledge. We have to know what progress students are making. But I'm doing pretty well in my program, my PhD program, but for a personal anecdote, I did really poorly on one course last term, and I was pretty close to failing. And if I'd failed that course, I would have gotten kicked out of the entire program.
Wow.
And yet, isn't that an odd sort of thing? I have had transformative learning in my program. I'm doing really well in the other parts of the program. But our systems are currently structured such that if I screw up in a really big way on a single test, suddenly I'm exempted from the whole thing, and I'm kind of black boxed, or I have a black mark on my record for that program. So some big systemic changes need to happen, not only in terms of curricula, but in terms of the way we look at how we assess learning and how we maintain students' academic records in order to move forward. Luckily, I did okay, so don't worry.
That sounds like, yeah, we used to have a term in our engineering program, it was to be or not to be. If you didn't get through to be, you were not to be.
Right.
So, I agree with you. If you take the true form of competency-based or outcomes-based learning, not everyone gets to the outcome right away. Right? Some folks are going to need to, try a whole bunch of different strategies to figure out or unlock whatever it is that's blocking them from building that understanding or achieving that mastery. So it may take you, a year to get through that one particular course.
Right.
But why shouldn't you have the ability to do that if that's what you want to pursue?
And why should we be so punitive if you make a mistake along the way?
Well, and there's actually good evidence now. There's been a few studies that I've read where if you actually take longer, you actually master at a higher level than the person that took a shorter amount of time. So, we have as a society decided to use approximations to help people progress. Like we take an approximate measure of, are you ready to go to the next level? And competency-based education allows us to personalize it. It allows us to say, well, are you ready? And do you have the foundation? Do you have all the critical skills? And if not, do you need more time? And do you need more remediation? And that part to me is really exciting. So it's we've been working on it a long time, and I think we're at a tipping point now where I'd say in the next 5 to 10 years we'll see this roll out across most professional programs.
Right, very neat. So do you see any specific opportunities for teaching, for this kind of transformation in Newfoundland and Labrador, whether it's at post-secondary or K-12 or in the workforce?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I shouldn't have said do. I should have said why.
I think folks here, how many believe that this is going to be part of the future of how you teach? It may not be today, but okay, good. So that's a great answer.
Yeah, it's a good sign. We have the will.
And a lot of those were the right hands to go up. So, to me, it starts with not every program.
Right.
And it also starts with the mindset of it doesn't have to be the same way for every initiative that you run.
Great.
It's not a one flavor fits all kind of model. That's not the point. Some programs are probably ready today because they've got defined curriculum. They're ready to do the mapping, and they're ready to do the assessment around it.
Right.
Whereas others, may take more time to actually build out those frameworks.
And so that's sort of the step-by-step, hey? Like define the curriculum, define what the outcomes are, and then find ways to assess. And if we can start with defining what the curriculum is and the outcomes, then if anybody in the room is sort of thinking about this, that's where they should start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can do interesting things. Like in our system, we have a tool called intelligent agents. So if you actually stumble on a competency, it can automatically recognize that. And you as a faculty member could craft this beautiful piece of feedback for them to get them back on track. And instead of you having to send that for every student that stumbles, you craft it once and personalize it and sends it out to every student that goes through that challenge. It's a great way to give feedback.
Can you explain that with an example? Do you have an example?
So the best example I have, and I think I've used it before, is Deakin University, but it's the best example I have globally. And it just continues to get better every year that I go and visit them. So they've now taken it from one course now to all the large courses. And they've taken completion rates in large classes from 60 to 70% to over 90%, which is a huge lift. That saves the university millions per year in retained revenue. They don't have to go through this recovery of students every year. So it has a huge impact. And basically what they've done is they've used a couple techniques. So in the system, they use intelligent agents for about 22 different interaction points.
Okay.
So let's say, for example, you did poorly on the first 2 assignments, and by the second assignment, after getting 50 on the first assignment, 60 on the second assignment, you're thinking, calculus is not for me. And meanwhile, in her class, this professor, she goes, congratulations, 20% improvement. Can't wait to see what you do on the next assignment. Here's the scaffolding that you're going to need for support. Don't forget to seek help. Here's some psychology being applied to get you motivated. Here's a sticker of the day. So it's, just using a bit of psychology, crafting a really good piece of feedback. The student goes, oh, someone's reached out. They noticed, and persevere. Because I notice how many deal with at risk, trying to figure out which students are at risk. There's a few, yeah. Okay, so there's there's a train of thought. This is I think 99% of the population is this way, which is I got to go solve all their problems. If they got parking tickets, I got to go figure out how we get those parking tickets resolved. If they got a family issue, I got to go help them with their family issues. And I think that's admirable. I think that's a good thing for us to go off and try to get to the root issues. But I don't think we'll ever solve all people's problems. I think there's another way to solve this, which is help give them the motivation and engagement to persist. And great teachers, the ones that I've talked to, do that incredibly well with the right tools, the right feedback, the right support. So it could be as simple as leaving an audio clip on their feedback on an assignment. Just walking them through it in your own voice, which by the way takes half the amount of time as it would if you were writing it. You cough, students love coughs. They go, this is authentic. But this has all been researched. And so, doing what comes natural, your personality coming across, you make a mistake, don't re-record that, just keep going. But all those things go to build a relationship with those students. It engages them, it inspires them to stay on track, and inspires them to get over a hurdle because they know they have a teacher, a faculty member that really cares. Don't underestimate that impact. And in this case, the research was half the students figured out, in some cases it was automated feedback. But 99% of the students said, I appreciate the feedback. So, because you could tell that the faculty member or the teacher had their hand in crafting it. And so, to me, that's one of the best examples I can think of in terms of having a major impact on students being able to progress well.
One of the challenges with that to me is that it sounds so easy, and yet adopting that mindset is really difficult. So do you have any tips on how to adopt I don't even know what to call it. It's a sort of automation first response, not automation because that's ugly. Feedback first. Yeah,
the big one for me was I used to think assessment and feedback were one and the same. They're not. So, you probably all know this. I didn't realize this until a few years ago. But assessment is when you're grading someone's assignment. You're giving them a 5 out of 5 on a multiple choice. That's great. That's not feedback. You're just marking them. You're just assessing them. Feedback is when you take the time to explain, in this case, like the great teachers that I've talked to say, they use a concept called feed-forward feedback. So they talk about the past assignment and notice the improvements to this assignment and what they still need to work, and then what they still need to work on for the next assignment, and giving them strategies on what to do on those next assignments.
Right.
And sort of stringing that feedback together, it's a huge impact. So whether it's you doing that yourself on each assignment, which I've talked to teachers that do that, and they're amazing teachers. I don't know how they do it. Or using technology to help automate some of the feedback. So, like, students value both. I don't think you're going to find a student that says this automated feedback that's spot on was not valued. So I would encourage doing more of it. Yeah. But to your point, like, it hasn't scaled. So like normally I would talk to a teacher. And my most recent thing has been I would say, okay, well now how have you scaled that? How have you taken that to other teachers in your school or in your university? And that's the big challenge that we have as a group now to tackle, is to take the best examples that we have in our university or in our schools or college, and I'll take them out widely across the campus and learn from each other. Because I tell you, every time I would tell one story about one teacher to another great teacher, that other teacher would make it even better, and then I would bring it back. And there's just almost like a competition for who can outdo each other on the best research or the best impact.
So you're suggesting
that's going to lift up all boats.
You're suggesting that we hold a conference about transformative teaching and learning and the intersections.
The intersections of curriculum and instruction and transformative learning is a perfect.
Good idea. Yeah.
Perfect theme.
An excellent idea. Okay, I'm going to change gears for a second because we've talked a lot about the role of technology for transformative learning. I wonder, so maybe this is a recap of what you just talked about, but I was going to ask about what you really wish more schools would get or do more of. Because I'm really curious about, from your external perspective, looking at all these different institutions, if there's something that we've missed, some opportunity that we're not taking advantage of. Would you say it is that idea of giving feed-forward feedback?
Well, whether it's feed-forward feedback or other strategies to address whatever is most important to you. So like in my case, we define like what we call 6 mission metrics. So 6 generic metrics that we think are highly correlated to student success or outcomes for students. Okay. And everybody's different. So some people care about certain metrics, some people care about others. So
mission metrics.
Mission metrics. Just to go through them, one's how to grow adoption. Okay. Right. So how do we help more people, leverage the technology or leverage, the courses you're teaching? Improving learning outcomes. So how do we help them get better grades? Competency-based education is a great example of that. How do we improve retention or completion rates? Driving better engagement, better learner satisfaction, or productivity. And you can have some things that, for example, giving feedback using audio is a productivity tool and an engagement tool and a learner satisfaction tool that drives better retention. So they kind of contribute to each other. So I kind of look for, I think you do this clustering analysis in your research, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Looking for what's the levers that are going to have the biggest impact on systematic change.
Yeah. Systemic change.
I know. I was waiting for the correction.
Because systematic change is changing the same thing over and over again, right?
So yes, I was actually going to correct myself, but you got ahead of me. So that's good. I'm learning. So what are those levers? Like, what is it that's going to work for you as a faculty member or as a college or university? And what is it that we can support in terms of great education? And how do we elevate the great faculty that we have to help them understand, these are some of the best practices, incorporate them in, make them their own, and then how do we diffuse that through the system? Right. That's the big challenge. The best examples I can think of are ones that are faculty-led, where then the system, if you will, supports them. Right. So they give them research money, or they give them time to go off and help other faculty, and it's that peer-to-peer diffusion of that experience, that knowledge, that impact.
Have you seen a school do that?
So Deakin is a great example. I challenged them with that last year, and they've already done it. It's amazing. They went from like a school of psychology to sociology to biology they just went school to school to school to school. They even have developed like a training program now for their TAs. So their TAs get taught how to give feed-forward feedback. and they built a whole program around this. And then they have a research group that now looks at the impact of every change that they make, semester over semester. And the graph is like up and to the right. It's every year they get better because of constant iteration. Now some semesters they take a dip, then they go, oh, well, maybe having a video every single day, people stop watching by the way, is a bad idea. Let's try something a little bit different. So having that researcher mindset combined with a great teaching mindset, I think that's where you find having the schools that have the biggest impact.
Cool.
Yeah. You probably have lots of examples out here. I would love to hear about them.
Might be the question you can ask the audience in a bit.
There you go.
In a bit, we're almost there. So you mentioned just then a funny segue, it's a bit of a rough segue, but you mentioned maybe a video every day is a bad idea. And interestingly, I was in a lecture with Dr. Lyle Wetch recently, who's a professor here studying online learning and video content. And he saw that online education, video-specific content, didn't have the kinds of engagement we were hoping for. And I remember a quote from a student that he used was something like, well, if you put it online, why is it so difficult? Something like that. I'm badly paraphrasing, but the student was surprised that an online education course required the same level of engagement as an in-person. They said, if we wanted this much work, we would have gone to an in-person course. So I wonder, the total oddball, but do you have any comments on that idea? The student perception of online versus in-person.
Well, I was sitting with the provost at Harvard and at an online learning conference, listening to people talk, and he says, well, the online courses that we have these folks do, we actually have them do the online course and sit in the classroom. He says, you think the online course is hard, just wait until you have to do both.
And blended is probably the way to go.
Yeah,
that makes sense, yeah.
I think online can be hard, in classroom can be hard. I think you've got to figure out how to teach in both environments. Both environments are different. What works online is not necessarily what works in the classroom, and vice versa.
Right.
But I see. I talked to, like, for example, there's a person that runs like the MBET program at Waterloo. Came up to me and said, my son had autism and was failing out of the traditional school system. I went to another client of ours was virtual high school, and virtual high school was teaching my kid, and all of a sudden he was going from failing out to getting 90s and 100s. Thank you. He's now in college. I never thought academic, career would be, the path that he would be on. And so, I think online can be hugely impactful on students that want more of a personalized experience, as long as we're teaching them in a more personalized way. But I think you can also bring the technology into a blended environment. That example of going from 60, 70% completion rate up to like, 90+%, in one case 98%, was a blended classroom with over 2,000 students.
Right.
So, it can work in both environments. But you just need to figure out what works for the environment that you're teaching in.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're starting to get to one of the concepts that I really wanted to talk about today, which is the notion that sometimes these things can act counterintuitively. And we've seen a lot of examples in the news recently about some pretty tough realizations about technology, about privacy and its influence on the news and misinformation and so on. So maybe as one of the concluding, so start thinking about questions if you've got them for John, maybe things that I've missed. But one of the things, what do you think the kinds of counterintuitive behaviors, what do you think, sorry, bungling this up, what kinds of counterintuitive effects do you think online or technology in education might have? Does that make sense? I didn't clearly ask that.
I think you're going to need to give me an example.
Sure. Well, so Facebook came out. We all thought it was great. We're all more connected. We all get to engage in content that we're all, so transformative learning just then. You went, So do you think there's a chance that online or that technology...
MOOCs for me was that, right?
Right.
So Stephen Downs, George Siemens were at a conference with us in Memphis. I think, Rob, you were even there. And we coined this term called MOOCs at that conference. I think it was either in Graceland or near Graceland. And the original intent was to break down sort of the final barrier, which is cost. How do we bring a low cost or no cost solution to the world? And the counterintuitive piece was, I didn't realize at the time what that meant was flipping who the product was. Like if you're not paying for a course or paying for a program, you're the product, which is your Facebook example, right? And so, it's an interesting challenge. There's still some purists out there that are building MOOCs so that it drives enrollment into their main programs. And so the business model is still pure, but most of the models have flipped to you're the product now, and your data and selling you as a lead to either employment or into a university is now the business model.
Right.
And so that was unintended, counterintuitive concept of dropping the lowest, the last barrier, if you will, to accessing high quality education for anyone in the world.
Right.
And I think we still need to work our way through that one.
Right.
I think the models that we've seen in terms of MOOCs, whether it's here in the province or the University of Tasmania down in Australia,
right,
are the right model. It's you work it as a funnel into the existing system, and you treat the education that they're getting as the product, not the student. Does that? That's probably maybe a bad example. I mean, New York Times did a great example on they talked about the impact of Google and privacy on Google. I don't want to go down that path.
Right.
Like we're doing everything we can to sort of avoid having students be the product.
Right. Okay, one more final question before you get to ask a question to the audience. But the last question that I will ask is, futurists, when we talk about the future, we often talk all about technology. I'm a trained futurist. We were trained not to only think about technology, to think about everything else that happens in the world too, right? So I'm wondering if there's a trend or a driver that you've seen that isn't from technology, something about how people are changing, how students are changing. Is there something like that D2L is thinking about and anticipating and working with?
So I think the one that's here today is you've got content and context, right? So fake news, if there's like a big theme that's out there today, it's fake news.
Yeah.
So teaching students context has become critically important, not just simply, here's the knowledge you need, because we've got to help them make cases and argue and help sort through what's real and what's not real, and that's becoming harder.
Yeah.
And then I think in the future, I think what Newfoundland's really equipped for is like imagination. If I look into the future, it's not necessarily about technologies, but unlocking people's imagination. And now we're thinking about how do we leverage technology to help you unlock their imagination. But at the core of it's unlocking the creativity and the inspiration and people to open up to the possibility of tackling some of these other big challenges that exist out there in the world.
Right.
Getting them inspired to go pursue what it is that they need to pursue or want to pursue. That to me is, I think, the next big challenge.
Yeah, and it's a huge opportunity. If we can unlock that, then suddenly we can get to impact so much faster.
Like here, we need more entrepreneurs in the province. We need more entrepreneurs in the small towns in the province. I sit on the governing council for the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council.
Right.
And the two of the key priorities. One's the transformation of teaching and learning.
Yeah.
And how does technology impact rural communities, small towns?
Right.
And I don't think we're seeing enough high quality work being done on either one of those topics right now. Like there's good work, but there needs to be a lot more if we're going to really tackle the challenges that we have either here in the province or across the country.
Right. Okay. So one of the unfair things about being a speaker and a panelist is that you get asked all the questions and you don't get to ask the audience questions. So
Ryan told me this was coming about 10 minutes before the session. So.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, we can't force them to answer, but if you have a question for the audience, what would it be?
So my question to the audience, give me an example or talk to me about what great teaching looks like. So what does it take to be a great teacher? Whether it's sharing an example of what you do in your classroom to inspire people, or what you've seen either from other people that you've been taught by or that you work with. Give me an example of what great teaching looks like. And if you could boil it down to like one or two words, that'd be amazing. Is that a fair question?
I think so. I think we'll have a few good examples.
We got a taker.
Building learning communities.
Can we?
Building learning communities.
Building learning communities.
Okay.
Is that loud enough?
Ailsa, do you want to?
We can repeat it too. Yeah. Go ahead, Teresa. Great teachers learn from their students. It's a great answer. I like that. Go ahead. empowering students to want to learn? How do you do that, though, as a great teacher?
It's a fantastic question.
One issue I find.
Can we get you to jump to the mic? Do you mind?
Come on down.
Because we're live streaming, so they won't be able to hear it otherwise.
My name is Tiber. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm in the chemistry department. Confidence is a huge issue, I'm finding, and I see more and more of it year by year.
This is teaching students to want to learn.
Just teaching students to not be afraid to put effort in. There's a fear of effort. There's a confidence issue, autonomy, and filtering of information. I notice a lot of, right? I don't know really how to do it. I try to get as much student-to-student interaction as possible so they can help each other, right? I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah. So, but you hit on something really good there, right? Which is confidence, right? Like in software, we have a term called fail fast, right? It's okay to fail. Like there's learning there. Just don't be slow in the learning. Just
and make it
fast,
safe to fail.
not fail slow.
And make it safe to fail.
But you make it safe to fail. You know, it's okay you didn't understand that right away. Like, how do we help you through that? Go ahead.
I would say teach to all 3 domains, but hit effective first.
Oh, great.
All 3 domains. Do you mind?
Well, I'm a science teacher.
Yeah.
So you're going to want to, cognitive, a very small amount, enough to get yourself going. Then out to try to find something that they like to do, enjoy. Okay. Go to the field, ecology, things like that. You have to, it takes work to identify that. Then once you have it, then you can increase cognitive, but also work through skills, psychomotor, and work at that. So
I agree. So my dad's a chemistry biology teacher, and I still run into his students all over the world. Some have become, one's the head of the hospital, and another one's teaching in University of Chicago. They're all over the world, and they still remember him. Like you're Steve Baker's son, right? And I'm like, what? and what they remember is like the walks in the park, everything that had to do nothing with the classroom. It was how he engaged them in even just walking through the community, or stamp clubs, or every other activity that got their minds opening up. And he would still teach them the chemistry and biology what did that, but yeah, it's interesting.
Everybody gravitates to something they like.
Yeah.
Everybody graduates to something. Everybody graduates to something they like. It's true.
Were there other thoughts? Yep, there's one back here.
And we can start to segue to questions now, too.
Hi, my name is Jillian. I'm an instructor and researcher at the Marine Institute.
Hi.
I'm not by any way saying that I'm a great instructor, but something I really pride myself on is giving a lot of feedback.
Feedback, yeah.
Any way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be formal. It can be informal, on the fly. But I find the more feedback you give students, I get a lot more of those aha moments. So instead of giving back a paper with 65 or a letter grade on it, they make fun of me. I got a package of red pens for Christmas recently, but it's true because they value the feedback. They want to know where they went wrong, and they realize they can't get better if someone doesn't tell them what they need to improve upon. Yeah. So I think to be a good teacher, I think you need to put a lot of effort into, and it takes a lot of time and effort, into the feedback piece.
Yeah, I agree with you.
If we have, so we've got a comment over here.
Is it Anna? Yes. Yeah.
And we have, so we're going to wait for the mic, just so people live streaming can hear us, too.
Or come down to one.
Yeah. And anybody else that has questions can also come to, so there's 2 mics here. We can line up and ask questions and engage. You can keep answering the question, whatever you've got.
Okay, hi, I'm Anna. I'm with the Faculty of Nursing. I think one of the most important things is feedback, but getting it from the students and getting it in a consistent and timely manner. So I teach pathophysiology in the fall with second years, and one of the things I found that I've been implementing the last 4 years that works really well is I ask them 3 simple questions at the beginning, the middle, and the end. What do you like? What don't you like? What do you want me to keep on doing? And it's incredible the amount of knowledge I get from them. So that to me is paramount, and I found that's worked really well. And year to year, my lectures are never the same. They're based on the needs of the cohort. Right. And intrinsically motivating them, I think, is probably the best way to get them engaged. But you have to figure out what that is, and that takes time.
Yeah, you've got to talk to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How,
Thank you.
How do you make it safe for them to be able to
Oh,
comment clearly?
that doesn't, the trust isn't advanced, it has to be earned.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. I do clinical as well. So one of the things I always say, it's not the mistake, it's what you do with the mistake. And then when they do make a medication error, it's devastating for everyone.
Yeah.
They're going to look to me to see how I react.
Right.
So it's not the words that are going to matter, it's what I do after, and then my reputation is there for the following students. So that's hardly advanced if they don't know you. You know, you have to earn that, and
Right.
you earn that through your actions.
Right.
So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Yeah, hi. Ken Snellgrove was my name. I was interested in your talk about, or the comments that you made about the student becoming the product as well. And so you're having to compete with people that are doing that, and so it seems to be that you're competing against a free product.
Yeah.
But I think lots of us around here don't really understand what are the costs, and we see free and we say, well, gee, you're asking us for cash, but these guys are saying free, come for free, and we'll give you this for free. Maybe you could help us to understand what the costs of free are.
Well, like, what's the cost of the student's data? Right? Like, I mean, that's what the Facebook challenge is right now. In their case, they're arguing it's the cost of freedom. Right? It's no longer democracy if people can trade on that data and swing elections. So it's a big challenge. That's taken to the extreme, right? Like, I don't think MOOCs are yet swinging elections. Massive open online courses. So it's basically free courses for the world.
And they have thousands of students in them at a given time.
Yeah. They could have thousands. They could have hundreds.
Yeah.
The University of Tasmania example that uses our platform, it's still free for the students. But they have 75,000 people register. 80% of those at start finish, about 80%. It's incredible success. It's an outlier for MOOCs, but they don't trade on the students' data. They use that data to, hey, would you like to enroll in the dementia program that we have? And that's where they're turning it into an economic model for them, versus others that will take that data and sell it to another company for a few $100s, so that they might try to reach out to that student to get them to buy something or enroll in something or to get employment somewhere. So it's a philosophical question, like, who's the product? Is it the student or the course? And I think right now we're on the side of, like, saying, well, we're going to work with our clients to experiment with this model, to try it out, but we've not made any, like, there's no plans for us to go down the path of treating students as products yet today. I'm very torn on that one, but it's compelling, right? Like, I met with executives at Facebook and Google and Microsoft, and they say, well, if you don't want to be the product, then we're going to have to start charging for the product. And no one wants that. It prevents growth. And so but they've made billions off of trading off of the data. So it's hard to compete with free, because free is not really free. There's probably the best article on this was, like, I think it must have been 10, 15 years ago, Harvard Business Publishing. And they said Google's business model, and it was real simple. It was like a fenced-in area, and their gazelles lined up, said free lunch, and their gazelles were dining on the beautiful salads that were in the garden. And on the other side of the fence was another little sign that says lunch, $100, and the lions were all lined up. And it was just, that's their business model. That was 15 years ago, but we're only now just starting to realize the true impact of it. And so, I think we as a society have to learn something from this. Have to think about what is the cost of free. That's a big question, by the way. We're not going to answer that in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah. You're good.
Yeah, I really appreciate your answer there, because we had a talk this morning anyway, and some of the Google model, for instance, seems like it's making it through a privacy commissioner's kind of lens that oh yeah, it seems that privacy is not an issue. But I mean, is that a fault? Is that a fault of the privacy commissioner, or is it good legal language that when we start to be presented with this stuff? I don't know. Maybe
So
I don't know if we want to
there's
keep on this theme or not.
Yeah, on the Google one, there's a great New York Times article on this that you should read. It's a long one, but it walks you through the privacy implications of that model. In their case, they argue, well, they're protecting the privacy for underneath the age of 13, as long as they're self-identifying for underneath the age of 13. But the challenge with the model is as soon as they turn 13, they convert all the data over. So it becomes part of their ongoing portfolio of data, which then they do use for their other activities. So I think in many cases, like, you got to shine a light on it, and you go, is that the model we want, or is there another model that we should be using, whether it's as a province or as institutions? Yeah.
It's another important thing to think about this dialogue, this debate, is whether or not the value of privacy is changing too. So this goes into that, like, technology isn't the only driver, right? Or technology isn't the only category of drivers. Facebook, despite all the bad news that we've heard, just recently posted record profits for the last quarter and an increase in users.
Yeah.
And so, we might see the current worldview as being protective of privacy and of all the things that John just talked about. And yet, 10, 20, 50 years from now, we might see a different picture. So one interesting thing for the university to keep in mind about this, and for all of our educational institutions, is that we are the bastions of knowledge, right? We are slow at changing knowledge because if knowledge changes too quickly, then we get misinformation. So it's kind of distracting from the teaching and learning focus of this conference, but it's really important to remember that one of the strongest values of our institutions is our ability to protect what is an accurate picture of the world right now, and have critical dialogue on that, of course.
Universities are becoming more important, not less.
Not less.
Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah. It's got to be something that I didn't ask.
You did a great job, Brian.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm from the faculty or School of Pharmacy here. I guess if you could comment on how technology and maybe D2L has an impact, or is looking at the amount of information, so information overload, and essentially the fact that science and technology is progressing, and there's more that students have to know.
That's right. So you're hitting on yet another reason why we have to be able to be more efficient with how we teach settled knowledge, right? And we have the equipment with new skill sets to understand the context, what's important, because we can't teach the same way and pile on twice the curriculum, right? We've got to get more efficient. I think competency-based education can get us to a point where we're 4 times more productive, long-term, not short-term, long-term. But I think this imagination piece, the topic of this conference is transformative learning, might be able to get us to an 8-fold improvement. But we're 20 years from that, right? Like, that's doing that on average efficiently. But at some point that's going to have to happen to keep up with the pace of new knowledge being created. And I don't know. This is a big challenge. Like, I've talked to folks that that are trying to create brain cloud interfaces, so you can use the cloud to compute faster. I don't know. It's like it's hard to think 20 years out, but some of these things are coming before that, right? So, but if we always rewind ourselves back to, like, what's at the core. What's the true north? Like, what am I trying to target? Like, is it about productivity? Is it about engagement? Is it about learner satisfaction? Is it about improving retention, or outcomes, or is it just simply about an adoption strategy? So if we always go back to that, like, the technology will come and go, different teaching models will come and go. But if we're always vectoring in on what makes those improvements to each one of those key measure areas, then I think we'll start making progress towards it. But my only suggestion for you today in pharmacy is competency-based education seems to be a path to get there sooner rather than later. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
One final question.
By the way, we're sitting on the real edge, right? Like we're talking about 1 to 5% of clients around the world. This is not the norm. So I don't need all of you to run out tomorrow and do this right away. But like, I think it is good to be aware of what's happening as we push down the path of transformative learning.
What do you think, though, the advantage is, too, if we are going out tomorrow and doing all this?
So if you do go out tomorrow and do this, the advantage is like you wind up like a university like Southern New Hampshire University, which is the fastest growing university in the US and went from 20,000 students to now over 100,000 students in 3 years. So that's the advantage.
Which university again?
Southern New Hampshire University,
No,
SNHU.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see their ads on TV now. Yeah. That's one model of CBE, right? We're partnering with them now on a refugee program where they've gotten tens of millions to support refugees coming in and getting up to a point of productivity faster through that initiative. That's a great example. There's many others. There's many others. If you want to grow, but that's again, it goes back to what do you want? Understand that first, and then figure out what's the best way to get there.
Right. Yeah. Any concluding comments?
Thanks for answering that one question. That was great.
Yeah.
No, I wish you all the best. The theme of this topic couldn't be any better. It's one of the best themes of a conference that I've seen in a long time. It's right at the heart of the transformation that's happening in the industry. You're having a great dialogue around this. Work with each other. You don't have to do this in isolation. Talk to us. We're happy to help. You're already a client. We're willing to support you through these changes. But most importantly, it's understand what you're trying to aim towards. Like what are you trying to do, and then we can help provide the right resources, right support to help you get there. So, to me, it's an exciting journey, and I couldn't be happier to be here in the province to be on it with you. So, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, John.